wonderful picture of Roger. For those of you who aren't in here, it's a picture of probably Tiger Woods, I think. But I like to think of Roger in that elegant pose. I'm standing here because Gary said he couldn't do it. Look, Gary's looking a bit emotional right now, and I'm feeling pretty much the same, and I'm honoured to be here doing what Gary would have done if he'd been able to, so I'm hoping I'll do him justice. Roger was a very, very, very popular man, as you can see by the number of people here today, from all walks of life. I didn't know much about Roger's early days, so Leslie and I went to Gary's house last week or the week before, and we had a Chinese meal together, and he shared some facts about Roger that I didn't know, so I'll share them with you right now. We took a bottle of wine with us that Jackie Hibbs had given us. Tony Hibbs was Roger's very, very, very best friend, and he died just over 4 years ago, and he was cremated here too. And some of us couldn't make it because we were a bit too nervous of COVID at that time, so I missed that funeral, and I know quite a few of you were here. And Tony had a collection of rather nice wines, particularly red wines, and when he died, Jackie said, they're far too good for me to drink, so would you like one? Well, I kept a bottle, and when we went round to Gary's and cafes with the boys and Barbara, we drank this wine and we shared some memories of Rog, and we had a very, very funny evening. And so I'll share some of the funny stories that I learned then, but some of the facts about Rog that I didn't know about. Hang on, I'll just start my screen up as it's going off. Rog was born on the 5th of August in 1942 to Jack and Ruth. He was born something like 50 yards away from where their shop is now. So, you know, he's a bit of a bugle man through and through. He was very, very well known in the Bugle area because, of course, his first work was in a grocery store, which some of you probably remember. Roger wasn't very keen on school. He particularly not very good at biology. One of the questions he was asked is, what sort of impurities are there in water? And he answered, fish, frogs and tadpoles. History was a bit shaky as well. He wrote an essay, a brilliant essay about a king, and he scored 0 for it because he wrote about the wrong king. Ross loved meeting people. He couldn't wait to get into the parents' grocery business. And he particularly liked doing the deliveries where he could meet all sorts of people. He was really good at meeting people and sharing their idiosyncrasies, and I'll share some of those in a minute. Roger was 18 when he met Barbara when she was 16. They were on a bus going to London. Barbara was going to meet a family relative. Rog was on his way to Speedway. He loved Speedway, and you know that he loved motor cars and would go to Le Mans every year with Tony and Dave, and he's in the room, and a few others. And Rog was trying to impress Barbara, and he had a red Austin Healey Sprite, and he would pick Barbara up in this thing. I say thing because it leaked like a sieve, and he took her on a romantic date to Summercourt Fair, and her feet got soaked. But they still stuck it out, and they got married in Roswithiel, and that was 58 years ago, on this June the 18th, 1966. Barbara and Rog had Gary, as you all know, and Gary was their pride and joy, and they worked very hard to pay for his education. And Gary went off to school, and then he went to university, and he did a master's degree in a very obscure scientific subject with absolutely nothing to do with furniture. And then when Gary and Kath got together, they were thrilled because they'd always wanted somebody like Kath in their life. And when we met for our Chinese meal, she was raving about how wonderful they'd been to her and how much they welcomed her into the family. So it was a lovely completion of their family unit, and of course along come these two handsome lads who happened to be particularly good at golf. And And one of them does look a bit like that. Rog loved his customers, and the rep spoke very highly of him and said how many times Rog gave them opportunities and openings, that he was really, really good with people. He spent many hours in his greenhouse. We thought it was because he loved gardening, but actually there was an electric chair in there and a book and a bottle of wine, and that's why I think he was particularly known for his gardening skills, because he would be in his greenhouse reading most of the time. But him and Kath had a competitive streak, and we'll always try and grow the biggest or the most. And they had a competition to grow the tallest sunflower, and Kath thought she'd won this. It was a monster thing, and Roger said, well, you should come and see mine. What he'd actually done was tied a sunflower head onto a very long stick. And the playfulness streak was quite strong in the family. Roger had a very prolific gooseberry bush, and every year it would produce mountains of gooseberry, and Roger was very, very well known for his jam making, and we used to swap recipes and jars of blackcurrant jam and that sort of thing on a Wednesday afternoon. It's quite appropriate that today is a Wednesday afternoon, because that's when we would have been playing golf, and we did that for many, many, many years. More of that later. So Rog had this very prolific gooseberry bush. Gary had a cutting from it, and it never produced anything. Year after year after year, Rog would swagger about how many gooseberries he had, and Gary would say, well, mine's got nothing again, until one year he came home from Rome, and the bush in his garden, in Gary's garden, was absolutely festooned with gooseberries. What had happened was, Kath had tied them on. Ross loved to travel, and him and Barbara had quite a few exotic trips. They went on Concorde, and many times they went on the Orient Express. And Ross loved to go to Le Mans every year, and I don't know if see Dave, but Dave Atkinson was part of this crime. They would go for 3 days, they would camp for 3 days, and Dave and Roger were tasked with going to get enough booze for the whole 3-day trip. They camped. First morning after their first night, they all felt a bit groggy. And then they realised that they drank the entire amount of booze that they got for 3 days. Roger was a very keen observer of people, and when we played golf, we would come in and talk about our round of golf, and Roger would then recount some stories about some of the customers. And he would tell some quite funny stories. He was a good observer. And he was telling us about one lady who came in and complained that this jar of spray polish that she bought was malfunctioning. And he said, well, what's the problem? And she said, well, every time I press the button, it squirts in my face. So he said, well, let me have a look at that. He said, if you turn it around the other way, it'll squirt away from your face. And she then thanked him for his expert knowledge. And they had a friend who had a campsite, and they were keen observers as well of humanity and people's peccadillos, I think the word is. And one of them came into Barbara and Roger one day and said, we had this customer who's a camper, and they've been camping here for years, but they've only stayed one night this time. When we asked them, well, why are you packing up? He said, well, the ground is much too far down now. So they were leaving because the ground was too far down. So some golfing stories. Roger and Tony had played golf together for many years. I can't remember when it started, but going back many, many years. They became good friends. They would travel to France together. And it nearly always involved golf, and nearly always involved a bit of drinking. And on one occasion they went to Perranporth to play, and it was pouring rain. Far too wet to play golf. So Tony suggested, well, why don't we just have a bit of a cocktail of brandy and wine and brace ourselves. So they did. And it was still pouring with rain, so we had another one, and then another one, and then it stopped raining. So out they went. They were far worse for wear. Tony was 7 up after 7 holes. And then the effects of the alcohol kicked into Tony, and Tony got it back, Roger got it back, and they ended up drawing the match. And Roger's proudest claim was that was the most honourable draw in golf I've ever had. I've got some more notes here. Right. Yeah, so their Wednesday golf extended, and they gradually invited more people. Roy, myself, Ken, Dave, Thomas, John's filming over there. So we became a little society, and we were given the name Gobdos. And the name Gobdo stood for Good Old Boys Day Out. And it was a good day out. We would go and play at St Austell one week, and then the following week we would go to somewhere else, like Bude or Herrenporth or anywhere, and then we'd have a meal on the way back. In the early days, after a round of golf, we would then recount our shots. We'd say, well, I played a wedge and I should have played a 9-iron. And we were able to remember every single shot. But towards the end of our golfing careers, that was no longer possible. So we'd come back into the clubhouse and we'd try and remember 1 or 2 good shots, but then the conversation moved to our health. And we found that we were spending most of our time talking about our illnesses. And I suggested on one occasion that we should limit this to maybe 5 minutes maximum. And if you don't need 5 minutes, you can pass your time over to somebody else. So we did this, and it worked quite a treat. Then we stopped talking about our health, and then we discovered we had nothing else to talk about. We each had a nickname. And John Smith was responsible for creating these. And on one occasion, we were playing at Bude, yes, and Roger had sliced a shot over there somewhere, and he was miles away from the green. But he had to clear some bushes, and he took a 7-iron. Now, a 7-iron normally hits the ball about 150 odd yards. But on this occasion, it must have been the shot of his life. And it was about 220 yards from the green, and he put it on the green. And John reminded me that we were playing China Fleet, and he put one over a hedge. And he used Roger's initials, and he came up with the nickname Reg Rosevear, which is an anagram of Rog Rosevear. If you want to know what Gary's nickname is, you'll have to ask him afterwards. Yeah, so I mentioned the fact that we used to talk about our golf shots, but then bad memory kicked in. A couple of stories from domestic life. Roger and Barbara had a burglary, and they were a bit paranoid about their bedroom window being shut. One day they were going to work in the morning. I thought they were in the same car, but apparently that was the one time when they could have 5 minutes on their own, and they went separately to work. So we drive to work in their own cars and listen to whatever they wanted to on the radio. On one occasion, Barbara said to Rog, did you shut the bedroom window? And he said, I don't know, I can't remember. So he got out of the car, this is about 8 o'clock in the morning, I have to say, went up to the bedroom, shut the window, pulled the curtains, and put his pyjamas on. To him, when he shut the window, pulled the curtain, go to bed. So Barbara had to come and find him, he was in his pyjamas. But Roger was a very generous person, and that's extended to Gary. Every year there's a golf week at St Austell, and they pay for 2 teams to play in a competition, and they pay for the golf, they pay for the food, and they pay for the drink. And John tells me that on one occasion, John's reputation is that he doesn't eat a great deal. he can make one chicken breast last about 4 meals. So Roger brought with him some paper bags so that John could take the surplus home for his dogs. There was one occasion when we were playing golf in Brittany when sometimes golf is, it tests you. The weather's awful, the ferry crossing was bad, the hotel's not good, you played bad golf. But on this occasion, everything was perfect. It had been a lovely trip, good friendship, nobody had fallen out, it was wonderful. And on one evening, Roger and I said, should we just go for a little walk along the beach? It was a beautiful moonlit night. It really was stunning. We walked along the beach and he said, I'd better take my shoes off because these are brand new suede shoes. I'll put them over there somewhere. Sensible, then we paddled in the water, we were talking about this, that and the other. Life was bliss. Until we came back to find his shoes in about 6 inches of seawater. And I like to think of Rog now floating off into the sunset. He and I, and a lot of people here who could easily have given the talk that I've just given, loved Roger to bits. He was loved by so many people. I shall never forget him. I'm going to miss him big time. And there's a picture of me and Rog when we were at his 70th birthday. And I don't know if you can see that, but it was another of those blissful moments where he was very happy, I was very happy, and I'm going to miss him, and I'm sure lots of you are too. That's my little tribute to Mr. Rog Rosevear.